how do you feel when you see these images where humans are exploiting other animals for like meat, dairy, eggs, and so on?
Well, I mean, in terms of the industrialization of it, it doesn't feel quite right. I grew up in more of a rural area of the United States, and it's like, I guess for me, the sad part is seeing a shift from a more, family-oriented business to, just like a corporate.
Of course, like nowadays in our society, it's very normalized to exploit animals, and also in the scale of course, right? But is there a humane way of exploiting them, even if they would be raised at a farm, have a happy life, and so on and so forth? Isn't it bizarre that then it is normal to kill them anyways, right? Which ones have it harder, right? The happy cow on a happy grass, on a happy field, right? That is grazing all day, right? Eating and having a happy life, and then you still kill them to eat the meat? No, it's not an option, right? I guess you would say that animals deserve respect, right?
I think it's something that should be discussed in society. I'm not entirely at the point where I am a vegan, but at the same time, it's like, the corporate farming has gone too far, and there's obvious that it seems like every human draws a line somewhere of what is okay to harm and what isn't.
Of course, but veganism, like maybe I'll explain what veganism is. So vegetarians, they don't eat meat, but they still eat cheese, milk, eggs, and so on, right? So it's a dietary choice.
Yes.
Veganism is a moral choice. Yes. We say we don't want to exploit other animals for our consumption, right? So it's not just the meat, cheese, eggs, and so on. It's also wool, leather, not going to zoos, not going to circuses, right? Not doing horse riding. On all these don't have to do anything with dietary options, right? It's not a dietary choice. It's just a moral principle that we say we humans don't want to exploit other animals because we are also animals, right? So if you see these images, what's ever thought about like becoming vegan? Ever tried it or anything like that?
I've considered. I know people who are. Like I said, I just. For example, you mentioned clothing, right? Is there an ethical way entirely to source clothes? It's if you purchase cotton clothes, unfortunately, a lot of cotton clothes are manufactured with slave labor in China. If you purchase polyester clothes, you're supporting, to some extent, oil companies that are manufacturing the oils.
Of course, yes.
A lot of things, there is unfortunately an evil associated with it somewhere. So it's like, how do you determine which evils are too much and how much are acceptable?
So veganism is just the principle that you try it as practical as possible, right? Of course, there will be mistakes.
Yeah.
It is not a heavy burden to overcome to decide to be vegan, right? You can decide from now, this second on, right? And then afterwards, you can still figure out how to make recipes, what to buy, what not to buy. There are a lot of resources online that you can find where you can figure out. You can also discuss with other vegans, right? How to live vegan. Because the burden is very easy. For them, it's very hard, right? For the animals, it's super hard, right? But you can decide from this point on to just not support it anymore, right? Because the best benefit from becoming vegan, first of all, is for the animals, right? Because they are not exploited for you anymore. You're not paying for it, right? But you can then also say that you would respect animals and you truly mean it, and you're not a hypocrite, right? Because if you then say, okay, I still consume meat, I still go to the next fast food parlor and just buy whatever without even thinking about it, right? Then you're missing the mark, right? It's an option that everybody can just pull through it, right? And then it is easy, right? It's 5 minutes Google research, right? So that's the excuse nowadays. 8 years ago, it was still difficult, right? Because 8 years ago, when I became vegan, I had lentils as like a non-stop food intake, right? Like there was no other options really to get fast food in a vegan option. Nowadays, Burger King, man, Beyond want meat, Impossible Burger. Like all these meat patties that are on the market right now, right? They just came along like the last 5 years or so, right? And this is what changed a lot of people's hurdle to overcome, right? It made it way lower, right? For the animals, it's still torturous if you don't decide to be vegan, right? But for us, it's so damn easy, right? If you would be in the position of the animal, how quickly would you want this to stop?
It's difficult for me to say. At some point, I know humans are not necessarily carnivorous, and that humans can live entirely without meat. That's totally possible, and people thrive on it. But I mean, there is, among the animal world, carnivorous action by other species towards other species as well. So how do you reconcile that, I guess?
Well, that's the definition of speciesism. Like in the 1750s, right? There was still slavery, right?
Yeah.
And it was normalized and also socially accepted that it is fine to have a slave, right? This was human exploitation, right? Of course. There was a civil war in the U.S. right for it.
Yeah, it was a great evil in the United States. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. We don't want to start a war as vegans, right? But same with women's rights. Like 100 years ago, a woman was not allowed to vote, right? They didn't have any rights in terms of like driving cars, right? They didn't have they were not allowed to go outside without their husband alongside them, right? Like these are like areas in our history where there was a ism, right? Racism, sexism, right? This is speciesism. We as the species Homo sapiens put ourselves at a higher grade than other animals, right? Other species, right? So we want to stop speciesism because all animals that have like desires to live, that feel emotions, that feel pain, they feel suffering, right? They should not be exploited for us because it's so damn easy to change our mindset nowadays, right? And I tell you, man, in 20, 30, 50 years, however long it takes us to convince the populace to change this mindset, right? Once this mindset is changed, we will look back at this industry as one of the most cruel things humans have ever done, right? Because it is living animals, feeling animals, right? That have emotions, they have a desire to live, that are just exploited for convenience, right? It's not necessary to do this, right? You agree this, right?
It's not necessary.
Yeah. So if you would be in their position, how quickly would you want this to stop? Imagine you are one of these ducks that are getting their feathers pulled for down, right? If you would be this animal, right? How quickly would you want this to stop? Immediately, right? So how many more animals should be exploited for you from today on? 0 or more than 0?
I don't think there's a way to do it where it would be 0. I think living as a human, at some point you will exploit an animal, unfortunately, right? And living as a human, you'll unfortunately exploit other humans. It's trying to figure out that balance of where you draw the line. And
exactly.
With veganism, you draw it, much further than the normal person. But
but it's like a decision you can make, right? Of course, you can make mistakes. Man, everybody makes mistakes. Toilet paper, for example, some of them are not vegan because they have like a horse glue that are used for gluing together this paper roll in the middle, like this cardboard roll of toilet paper. That's sometimes not fucking vegan, right? But these are steps, these are problems that you don't have to worry about at all at this moment, right? It is this switch in your head that you can turn off and you say, okay, now I'm aware what happens to these male chickens that are not gonna lay any eggs, right? Look what happens to them, right? That's vegetarian, by the way, right? Because they still still eat chicken, they still eat eggs, right? Milk industry, the same thing, right? It's mothers that get raped, like artificially impregnated, right, to give birth to a baby, but the baby doesn't get the fucking milk. It's mother's milk that is meant for the fucking cardboard box for the supermarket. It's ridiculous. Yeah. So you can do this switch in your head today and then figure out what comes next, right? It is easy. Like, this is the burden I want to lower for you as well, right? So you can decide from today on to become vegan.